Hi, I'm Kara, mom of 3, pediatric sleep expert, certified parenting coach, and founder of Well Rested Mama. Welcome to the Unswaddled podcast. Tune in every other week as we chat about baby and toddler sleep solutions, overcoming parenting challenges, and all things messy motherhood. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Well Rested Mama Unswaddled. Today we have Kendall.
I'm back.
And we are going to talk about why sleep training might not work, because it always works if you do it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So our goal for this episode is to kind of take a step back and help you identify what you might be doing or what other things might be coming into play, causing the sleep training not to work for you and your little one. Because at the end of the day, every baby is sleep trainable. Mm-hmm. There are, of course, medical issues that can play a part, but for the most part, if your baby is happy and healthy and there are no medical issues, it shouldn't be a problem.
Yes. We get a lot of feedback, whether it be on social media or from clients or people coming to us for the first time who are saying sleep training didn't work for us. And typically, once we talk to them and figure out what's going on, it's always something external that is kind of hindering that rather than the sleep training itself not working. So,
and all we have to do is ask a couple questions and we can pretty much pick it out immediately. So that's the good news. The good news is that it does work. We just have to figure out why is it not working for you and how to fix whatever it is to get you to the other side. So when it comes to sleep training, you are struggling, it's not working, you've tried all the things, you've done every technique you could find online, whatever it may be, what is the problem? The biggest thing is going to be making sure that you are ready, okay? And what I mean by that is that you have done the research, you know what sleep training you're going to use, you know how to use it, and you're confident using it, because that is obviously a huge chunk of getting to the other side, but also making sure that you're aware of where your baby's sleeping. Is it set up correctly? Are you, age appropriate? Are you like in the right zone for all of that stuff? So just, I would say making sure that you have kind of like a plan into
like
place.
a foundation of like, okay, I've checked all these boxes. Now sleep training comes into play.
Yeah. It would be like, I'm going to go run a marathon, but like I haven't exercised.
Yes.
Right?
I don't have shoes. I don't have the clothes for that. I'm not hydrated.
But I'm going to try it anyway and see what happens.
Yeah.
So making sure you're ready is like the ultimate starting point before you even begin. When it comes to choosing a technique, you have to make sure that you are choosing a technique that you're comfortable with, because if you're not comfortable with it and you don't know it inside and out, I could confidently say, and you probably agree, that you're not going to do it correctly, right? And consistency, I feel like this is like
we say it every episode.
Consistency is key.
Everything. It's everything.
But it is. I mean, it's just with anything else in your life. Like if you're not consistent, it's not going to work. Like you have to realize you're teaching your baby how to do something that they literally don't know how to do. And if you're not consistent and you're not laying it out perfectly, they're going to be like, what's happening?
Yeah. Or your toddler who's like, I'm literally looking to test a boundary here.
Yeah.
So if you show me that can be tested, I'm going to do it.
Yeah. So really making sure that that technique that you pick is achievable, because another little like example, it would be like, you're trying to like your 2025 resolution is something insane. Like you have to, it has to be measurable. Like you have to be able to keep track and like do it, right? And if you can't do it, you're setting yourself up for failure.
And it also though has to strike a balance between what you're comfortable with and what's going to work for your child, because we have definitely worked with a lot of families in the past that on both sides, like some people are like, I want to stay in the room. I want to be there for the whole thing because I don't want to leave and let them cry. And the thing is, sometimes the babies are like, that doesn't work for me.
Like, why are you in my room?
Why are you
but
in my
you're
room?
not laying with me.
Exactly. It causes way more frustration than it actually helps them. And sometimes giving them that extra space and kind of having a technique that is a balance in between helps them the most, but it can also ease your anxiety. And same with toddlers, right? Like there are some methods where you're in the room and there are some where you're out of the room and you're doing check-ins. So finding a balance, I think, for what works for them, but also what you're comfortable with.
Yeah. And also what you know that they can handle. Because like there's a lot of kids that can't handle that. Like Caleb would be like, what? Get
Being
out.
in the room.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Caleb's like, I don't want you to lay with me.
So like if you are trying to do something because it's about you, that's a lot. We see that a lot where yes, you're comfortable and you're choosing this because this is what you want, but it's not the right choice for them. So that's like really important to just make sure that you're choosing a technique that is going to be something that you can handle. It might not need to be something you're comfortable with. It has to be something that you can, like, I've got this.
Yeah.
Like it might be weird. Yeah. Like it's okay, but I know that I can do it. And that is like number one.
Yeah.
And once you've chosen that technique, right? Like I've got this, I'm ready. Like everything is put into place. The biggest mistake I see people make is, and this goes with people who have tried, right, before they've come to us, but it also goes with people who have received our information and they choose a start date, but they try to start before our support period. And it is so common. It's crazy, but because you're excited, right? Like you want to do it. But the biggest thing, and we see it, I'm telling you all the time, is the sleep training is being implemented in the middle of the night. Okay. So like what we mean by that is you're ready to go. You have a plan, right? You're like, when baby wakes up at 2 a.m. is when they always wake up, right? That's their only waking. That's the only thing I'm trying to push out. When they wake up at 2 a.m., I'm implementing the sleep training and I've got this, which sounds great, right? Like it sounds great, like a good idea. But what they're forgetting is that their baby was assisted to sleep at the beginning of bedtime. Okay. So when they're assisting to sleep at the beginning of bedtime and then in the middle of the night, they try to implement sleep training, the baby's like,
what
WTF. Like the last thing they remember is you being there because you helped them, but now all of a sudden they have to do it on their own.
And like, honestly, anything, like if you wake up in the middle of the night and someone tries to tell you something, it is always going to be more confusing than at bedtime.
Yes.
Like that's just one thing.
But also my favorite, like little, I don't even know what you call it, but like example would be if you went to bed in your bed and woke up on your neighbor's couch and I saw Jeff, right? Like Jeff's on the neighbor's couch and I'm like, just give him a little bit. He'll fall back asleep.
No.
Like he'd be like, where am I? How did I get here? Like what's happening? Right. So like when you're assisting a baby to sleep and they're all asleep and you put them in the crib and then they wake up at 2 a.m. and you're like, no, I'm just going to like let them vibe it out and see what happens. Like their brain remembers being with you in a different environment completely. And all of a sudden they're in a space, like they're not going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And like it's not going to happen.
This kind of ties into like when people are like, my baby hates the crib. Like they hate the crib.
Yes.
And it's like, they don't really hate it. It's just that they fall asleep in your arms every single night. So when they wake up and they are in this space that like, there's nothing there, there's no one cradling them.
They don't know where they are.
They're like, I'm not having it. I'm looking for the thing that I had at that initial bedtime.
Yes. Their brain always goes to the last thing that they remember. And if that's you or eating or doing something that they physically cannot do themselves, they're not going to magically do it in the middle of the night, which is like, you can't expect them to.
Yeah.
It's a very
but it's common because people are like,
of course.
we get inquiries all the time. Like I really love bedtime. Like I love rocking them to sleep. It's just the middle of the night wakings that are killing us.
Yeah.
But unfortunately it's one of those things where you can't have both.
Also like piggybacking on that, if you enjoy rocking them to sleep at the beginning of the night, that's great, but you have to do it again when they wake up. So,
or like rock them. Part of our thing is do what you want in the bedtime routine. Rock them, snuggle them, do your songs, your lullabies, your stories. But the biggest thing is that you are placing them down awake at that bedtime, and then you're starting the sleep training from that point until they fall asleep.
Yes. Initial bedtime until they fall asleep, and then during any night wakings before morning, because that is where they're learning. That initial bedtime, they're awake. They know that you've left the room, and that's where you're going to be able to teach them that you're coming back, right? And like, we're here, we're coming to you, but we're not going to climb in your crib.
And vice versa too. Like if, you are implementing sleep training at bedtime, like we do a lot of morning check-ins where they did it at bedtime, they did great. But then the middle of the night wakings come, and obviously they're just harder because everyone's
you're tired.
And usually it's happening multiple times. So helping to sleep during the middle of the night wakings when you sleep trained at bedtime, that's where you're also not going to see that progress. And that's where we get a lot of like, sleep training didn't work for me. Correct. But really, it's just back to that consistency is key.
Consistency. Kind of like hand in hand with that. The sleep crutches, you really have to know what you're removing. And I think that a lot of people assume that a sleep crutch is, falling asleep in your arms or falling asleep eating, which are obvious ones, but there's a couple others that like aren't so obvious. And I would say the top two are rocking too much to where they're still awake, but they're drowsy enough to where they don't care or notice that they're leaving, or the pacifier. Because the pacifier can trick you in the sense that their eyes are open, they're awake, they know that you're leaving, but they're using that pacifier to fall back asleep or to sleep initially, but it becomes an issue because they can't developmentally replace it themselves.
Yes. Anything external that they cannot do on their own if they wake up in the night. So like if you're trying to get over the rocking stage where you have to rock them, 5 times a night, but you're keeping their passy in, they're still going to wake up. And if they don't have that passy in their mouth, some babies aren't all for it, but a lot of times they're going to cry until it's replaced. We talk to parents about this before they're starting with us, and we let them know that if the passy is going to become an issue, if it's something that, their baby's waking up multiple times during the night crying for that to be replaced, then that's going to be something that needs to be removed at the beginning of the sleep training process.
And it's an age thing too. Like I feel like it's pretty spot on. Like 7 to 8 months is when they kind of figure it out. But like if you're sleep training a 4-month-old with a passy, it's got to go. Like there's zero chance your baby is going to replace it themselves. And you're just, now you're playing passy pong all night and it's like miserable.
Yeah. Not a fun game to play.
No. I did that with Blakely.
Did you?
When she was a toddler, though, because it would get stuck in her duvet. That's why I ended up taking the pacifier away. She was in a queen-size bed with pacifiers, and they would just get lost in her comforter. And that's when I was like,
I remember like when she was done with the passy and like we would put her down for a nap and then I would wake her up and she had a passy in her mouth. And I'm like, where did you get that?
Found it somewhere.
Like hidden.
And if you've checked off all those boxes, okay, like your sleep training technique is good for you, you're implementing it correctly, no sleep crutches at all. They're fully capable of putting themselves to sleep beginning of the night, middle of the night, but something's still off. I would say the sleep environment plays a big role, mainly because your baby's going to wake up in the middle of the night no matter what. And especially the early morning, that 4 to 6 a.m. time frame is so, so, so crucial because it's their lightest time of sleep. So I can always guarantee that that is where a little bit of struggle can come into play. And if the sleep environment is not like set up for that, we definitely see where the babies are more persistent during that time, or
they're going to prolong the waking.
Yeah. Or the bedtime, like too, even if bedtime's early and the sun's still up and they're struggling, you're like, they know how to do it, but like, it's it's taking too long. That could be playing a part. So, and that's an easy fix. I mean, the bedroom is easy.
Yeah. That's the easiest thing. Throw some black trash bags up on your windows. No, that's like last resort where we tell people, but it really works.
I know. Well, that's what I use when like we travel to my parents' house or anything, because like they don't have the blackout curtains. So I'm just like painter's tape and black trash bags.
Gotta do what you gotta do. Fine. We love slumber pods. Sleep out's good too. Like if you kind of need more of a temporary thing that you can take down and put back up, that like suction cups to the windows. There's Amazon products we love, like the blackout cling film that you can cut to the size that you need. But also,
I've had people tell me they use aluminum foil.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know about that one.
Isn't that weird?
Light from electronics too. That's another one where like when we are starting with a new client, we ask them, go in your room during the day, turn off the lights. Well, baby's room. Turn all the lights off, close the door, and take a picture.
Without the flash.
And we want to see how dark it is. And a lot of times there will be like a huge red light in the room.
Or like stars on the ceiling.
Yes.
Like
Which
projectors.
it's cute. And people say, red light, it's good for sleep.
They
and
say.
They say. But we say no light. No light at all, because they don't know. Babies aren't scared, right? They have no sense of that yet. They don't have the imagination for that. So all lights off, limit the stimulation.
And the biggest thing too is like, even aside from all of that, is with sleep training, you're in the room so much.
Oh,
and if they can see your face clear as day, like you are just pissing them off at that point. Like,
or like they're going from like, I'm kind of awake, to now you've opened the door and like,
yeah, they're like, hello. And it's just like too much.
Yeah. And also during the sleep training process, we've gotten questions too that are like, how am I supposed to see when I'm in the room? And it's like, you know, it's kind of a hard question to answer, I think, because it's like you kind of just have to work around it.
I knew where the crib was.
Yeah, you kind of have to memorize the room, but also like a tiny nightlight, like a tiny, really dim
And when you open the door,
well, that's what I mean, like in the hallway or something, like. But you just want to avoid like turning the hallway light on, opening the door, and then going in for a check-in, because then your baby's gonna go, "What are you doing?"
Yeah. And let's keep in mind that like sleep training is a process. It's a journey. It's not going to be something that happens overnight. Granted, it does sometimes, right? I mean, I'm not going to lie and say that it doesn't.
Yeah.
There's a very good handful of babies that just get it right away and there's no turning back. But I do like to just remind people that it can be like a 2-week journey. Like it takes time. I would say that there's definitely, you see the most progress in the first 3 nights. Like things are trending in the right direction. Then there is a very weird setback night 4 and 5 that doesn't happen to every baby. And I don't even honestly talk about it in our like training calls. I don't want them to like anticipate it.
Yeah.
But it can happen to where 1, 2, and 3 are amazing. You're like super pumped up. And then 4 is like a complete shit
It's like
show.
night 1.
Yeah. And that is very normal. It's like they're identifying the routine. They're getting there. They have a little bit of a regression. And then that next night, everything's back to normal. So that is where I do sometimes see people panic on that 4th night and they drop the consistency or they do something that's going to set them back to day 1 again. And we really want them pushing through that 4-5 night weird episode so that
like
you're able to get to the other side.
Their last
they're just
push,
testing
they're going,
it out.
Are we really doing this?
Yeah.
And then if you stick through it, you really will see like that consistent progress. First night is the hardest, always.
Yeah. Typically at bedtime though. I mean, I feel like the middle of the night, you never really know what they're going to do.
Yeah.
Like some babies are like, they wake up for 5 minutes. Some wake up for 2 hours. Like,
and we've definitely had people that are like, the baby didn't cry at bedtime, went to sleep in 10 minutes, slept through the night. So it's all over the place, but we've seen it all. And the biggest thing is just to push through that 4 to 5 night regression and
stay with it. Just stick with it. Get to the other side. You don't want that to like spook you, because in reality, from this moment forward, you're always sleep training. Like they're going to wake because of something. We don't know what, but I promise you, you know, they could be silent for 3 months and then you're going to hear something, and you just want to make sure that you're always just like playing it cool. Don't do anything that's going to set you back, because the worst part is with sleep training is that one time can really make you press that restart button, which kind of stinks because you work so hard to get there. But I will say, as quickly as that reset happens, it's as quickly as they get back into the groove. So it's not like a huge panic opportunity, but just be mindful and know that you're always sleep training. Like you're always, you know, I mean, Blakely, I swear, has had the stomach bug. I was in her room laying with her. The stomach bug went away, perfectly healed child. And she was like, are you going to sleep with me tonight?
Right. And she is how old?
7. So like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They get a glimpse of something.
And also, like regressions and kids just go together. Like potty training, right? There are regressions.
I hate the word regression, but like they're progressing in a different way. So like they're not acting out, but like when they're learning something new on one side, something on the other side is going to be affected, and typically it falls back on.
Yes. So just keep that in mind. Like if your kid is potty training and they're doing great for a few nights and then they have an accident, you're not like, this is not working.
Yeah, back in diapers. Like, you keep
like,
going.
Okay, we're practicing. So it's the same thing with sleep. It's just typically a little bit more stressful because everyone's sleep deprived. So,
and you're tired.
You're tired. Yeah.
Speaking of
not sticking,
stomach bugs.
Oh.
Sickness. I mean, that is the most common. And like, obviously I like joke that Blakely did that, but like it's real.
Mm-hmm.
She did do that. And had I like let her sleep with me or something, now all of a sudden I have a 7-year-old that sleeps with me and we completely regress. So that is the number one top return client story, I would say. They, I get an email and it's like, hey, this was so amazing. We loved working with you guys, but it's not working anymore. And I can ask 3 questions and figure out what happened that caused them to set back. And ultimately, it always comes down to travel or sickness.
Yep. A lot of times, like when you're going on a trip, the room situation might not be ideal. And this is why we talk all the time about slumber pod, tips for traveling to keep things on track as best as possible. Because a lot of times the story is they went on a trip, their toddler like wasn't having it with whatever sleeping situation they had there, so they just brought them into bed. But now when you get home, your toddler's not just going to be like, cool, back to my bed. They're going to go, I want to sleep with mommy.
Or you're home and they get sick and you bring them into bed with you for whatever reason. It's understandable. You're, I don't know, worried, right? Like something, whatever. And you're co-sleeping with them, or you end up rocking them to sleep, or they're really little and you thought, well, they weren't eating as much today, so I'm going to start feeding in the middle of the night. And now all of a sudden you have a 12-month-old that eats 3 times in the night, and just stuff like that kind of comes into play. And they are like, what do I do? And it's, like I said, as quickly as you kind of regressed, it's as that quick to get back on track. It's just a matter of getting back on track. And the only way to do that is to sleep train.
Yeah. And we always get questions like, once someone's successfully through sleep training, we're at the end of their support period, we always do like an exit call. And travel and sickness is something we touch on all the time, because they're wondering, like, now that I have this glorious sleeping baby, I never want to go back. How can I avoid this? If they get sick or if they travel, trust your gut. Especially with sickness, it's like, trust your gut. If you feel you need to do something, do it. But just know that once you're through it and they're feeling better, go back to that sleep training technique. It will only take a couple of nights of consistency to get back on track. If they are having a cold or something, like, don't immediately assume that they need the help to sleep again.
Exactly. And I always tell people, like, we all get sick. Like, it is something that's going to happen for the rest of their lives. And we want them to be able to sleep no matter what they're going through. Sickness, growing, like it does teething, like it doesn't matter what's happening to them in a health or developmental standpoint. We want them to be able to sleep, because when they're sleeping, they're healing and everything like that. So it's super important and totally possible to tend to their needs, make sure, they're getting what they need. I mean, I remember setting alarms and going down and administering medicine and stuff like that, but like they always stayed in their cribs, no matter what sickness they had. I mean, Blakely had RSV. I would go in, get her out, do the nebulizer, get her back in. Sure, would it have been easy to just stay in bed and put the mask on her face? Like, of course, that would have been easier, but I wanted her to stay in her sleep space and like have that sense of like comfort and be able to rest.
Yeah. Well, because also, like, once you get back into that cycle where they are reliant on that help, right? Chances are, like, a lot of times they're getting less sleep than they actually need, because they're waking so many times in the night that sleep is broken. And that's why we're like, the biggest thing you need when you're sick is sleep. You need that rest. So if you can go into it first with the confidence that they can do this, like it's okay that they're sick, they can still have this skill and be able to put themselves to sleep.
I also feel like, kind of like to go with that, it's not so much about them sleeping with you because they're sick. It's because you sleep better not having to get up and go back and forth. So it's more about you than it is the baby.
Yeah.
So it's which is hard, because it's like, that's the brutal, like that's the truth. But you have to, like, I had to go downstairs. I had to get up, and whereas obviously it'd be easier if everything was on my nightstand and I just rolled over and did it. You know what I mean? Right. So you got to like really sacrifice a little bit to keep everything consistent.
And if not, go back to that technique. You can always get back on track.
All right. Now we are going to go through some questions that you guys submitted on Instagram.
Okay. First one is sleep trained, but now 9-month-old has separation anxiety and random wakings at 1:30 a.m.
Okay, so I would have a couple questions, but my initial instinct is that the two are not related.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I say that is because if they're already sleep trained, the middle of the night waking is most likely connected to the daytime schedule.
Yes.
And it's a little early, but obviously I don't know their birthday, but I would say they're in the process of transitioning away from the 2 restorative naps.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe checking out the next schedule, which would be a 1-hour nap in the morning and a 2-hour nap in the afternoon, just to kind of build those wake windows a little bit, which also adds to that wake window before bed. But in regards to the separation anxiety, that age is very normal. So 8 to 10 months is just developmentally that range of separation anxiety. Yeah. So the biggest thing that we would say is we like play with them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Peekaboo is a really good one. Leaving the room.
Yes. Anything that you can do to show them that
you're going to come
go
back.
away, but you will always come back.
Yeah. So even if it's like putting them on a play mat in the living room and then go to the kitchen for 30 seconds and then you come back and you're like, hi, la la la. And it's very engaging. So you walk away, they see you walking away is key. And then engaging them when you come back.
Yep.
And 30 seconds is enough time. I mean, there's so little and then you can kind of build on that.
Yeah.
But I don't think the two are connected. I think that you can combat them separately.
Yeah. Next question is, what if my baby cries for hours? Does that mean it's not working?
No. Okay. At the initial bedtime?
Yes.
Okay. So with that, you're taking a step back and there's a couple things. So first thing is, was bedtime at the right time? Okay. So were they overtired? Causes longer. Were they undertired? Not tired enough? A lot of times we see it takes longer at bedtime when the sleep training is not being implemented correctly.
Yes.
Which I hate to say that, but it's very common. And the biggest thing is that you are too involved.
Yes.
And you're just causing too much stimulation, too much irritation. They're so mad. You can't calm them down. And it ends up in just so much more crying overall that the baby's so far gone that it's like now everyone's crying.
Yes. Because we talk to a lot of parents that are like, I've tried this before, but it was insane at bedtime.
Or they say we were at 40 minutes and it wasn't working, so we stopped.
Oh, yes.
And then you're building their stamina. You're literally teaching them that you have to cry for 45 minutes to get your attention or what they're crying.
Whatever that help is.
Whatever the changes you're making. And now that's their baseline. So then the next time you try, they're for sure going to get to 45 minutes. And then you're kind of just teaching them to go longer and longer. And we don't want to teach them that. Like the last thing we want is for your baby to think that they have to cry for 45 minutes to get your attention.
Yeah.
Like that's insane.
Yeah.
So that's where the check-ins are supposed to be short and close together, but at the right time. Because if you're not going in at the right time, that's where it drags it out and it causes all that irritation.
And now they're just pissed.
Yeah. And you're at 2 hours of them crying. Like it shouldn't be that long.
Or, we have gotten questions before where, parents have tried sleep training and they're like, it was insane. It took 3+ hours. And
we're like, no way.
Yeah, it shouldn't take that long.
No.
I don't think it should ever take that long if it's being implemented correctly and if you timed bedtime correctly based on their daytime sleep.
I would say, I mean, it does take time.
Yeah.
But like 40 to 90 minutes, I think is
most common.
Probably closer to like 60 or less. I mean, obviously there are babies that are super stubborn or
strong-willed babies.
It just depends on like how much you've tried and how much you've taught them to fight you.
Yes.
Because that's like the hard part. Like they're not manipulating you. They're not like doing it on purpose. It's just what have they been introduced to?
Are they overtired?
Yeah. There's just a lot of things kind of coming into play with that.
Yes. Last thing I want to touch on for that is that first night is the hardest. So like just keep in mind that it definitely can take some time. If it's hours and hours, that's where we say reach out to us.
Yeah.
We'll like ask you some questions and figure out, do you need support or what could you have done differently?
Or a plan. Like do you need we'll tell you what to do.
Yeah, we can text you through it.
Yeah, it's just.
But yeah, it's hard the first night. It should get better after that, but it definitely shouldn't be taking an extreme amount of time. And if it is, reach out to us. How do I handle sleep training if my baby's in the same room as a sibling?
Okay, so I would definitely want to know the ages. But my advice would be, assuming one is older, to remove the older one for the first 3 nights or so, get the baby or the younger one underway, and then put them back together. Assuming the older one's old enough to talk to, I would say communicate with them, let them know that baby's okay, they're safe, they're, mommy and daddy are coming in, checking, whatever, doing X, Y, and Z. Allow them to be a part of the process, because the reality is that younger child is going to wake up at some point, and you just don't want the older one feeling responsible or like they're supposed to do something, like kind of really educating them on the plan and get them involved, and then
walk them through it.
Yeah.
Separate them if you need to. If you have another room that you can kind of set up a temporary space, or, on the floor in your room. Or if it's the older kiddo that you're sleep training, like a lot of times that's a bit more intense, because toddlers are just naturally more strong-willed and more vocal. But bringing baby maybe into your room for a few nights, like not doing anything that would put you, like set you back from where.
Or grandparents. I've had people do that, where the grandparents have taken one of them for like a sleepover, especially if they're like older ages, where it could be something fun like that.
Yeah, lean on your family if you can. But either separating them in some way until you kind of get the one that is having the sleep issues on track, and then you can bring them back together.
And you should be able to put them back together within that week, same week, or a couple of days. So.
How do I figure out if my baby's overtired or undertired?
It's a hard one.
It is a little bit
hard. I would really learn wake windows. And I mean that in the sense of age appropriate.
Yes.
And really trying to figure out where they kind of fall. And if you are successfully like manipulating them correctly, I think is like the biggest thing that people kind of fall on. So, I would say overtired, they're losing their minds.
Yeah.
And undertired, they can be a little bit fussy, but they're more like content, just like playing just in there or awake.
Yeah.
They're not just like screaming. They're not going to like scream bloody murder in there or anything like that if they're undertired. So that would be like my biggest like
take a look at what they're doing during whatever those wakings. Like typically overtired, we see one, they'll have a hard time with bedtime, or so either they fight bedtime, they're crying a lot, takes them 45 minutes of crying to fall asleep, and then they wake up 30 minutes later, which we call a false start. Or they fall asleep within 5 seconds of being placed down.
And you're like, wow, they went to bed so easy. And it's like, oh, too fast.
And then they have a false start. Or they wake up really early in the morning. That's another one for overtired. Typically, they're waking between like 4 to 6 a.m. really upset, and they're just having a really hard time going back down.
And they're up for the day.
And then undertired, like you said, it's just typically like either they're taking like over 30 minutes to fall asleep at bedtime, but they're just kind of like,
they're okay with it.
They're okay. They're just in there. Or they have night wakings that are like an hour plus. And you just have those prolonged night wakings where the parents are like, well, I don't want to go to sleep. They're like in there awake, but also they're not crying, so I don't want to go in the room. So those are the biggest signs, I think.
Yes.
On our Instagram, we have pinned wake windows and nap schedules by age. And we have that on there because it's such a common question. But if you do want to get an idea of like where your little one's at for their age, go check that out and follow us, because we're posting this kind of stuff all the time.
We hope this was helpful, because I feel like it's super common, and sometimes you just like don't know why something's not working, and it's like you get frustrated. So we hope this was helpful. As always, please reach out to us if you're still having a hard time figuring out exactly what is causing it to not work for you. We offer lots of things on our Instagram, but of course we offer that one-on-one support that we would be happy to set you guys up with. The next episode, we have a super special guest. We have Tara from Dreamland Baby, who will be coming on. We will have lots of questions for her, of course, talking about all things sleep sacks and sleep accessories and just all our favorite products that we love and obviously love to share with you guys because they do affect sleep, and we find them to be a very important part of our process as sleep consultants to help you guys get, to where you need it to be and to get those babies comfortable and kind of noticing those sleep associations, even though they're material items.
Yep.
And as always, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Give this video a like if you found it helpful, or share with a friend. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and we'll see you next time.